All right. And I think we're recording. We're here today with our first immigrant entrepreneur podcast. We're with Sebastien Gaddini, my good friend. He's the co-founder of Smardii. We'll explain what that is all about in a few minutes. He has an LLM from Temple University in Philadelphia. He's a French attorney, and he's admitted to the New York bar. Hey, Sebastian, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Danny?
I'm good. Um, Here trying to make kind of like the best out of bizarre world we're in right now.
I know. It's crazy times. Here at home is the same. We are trying to put our heads around what's happening
Mhm.
and just follow the guidelines and stay safe at home. With wife and kids. So
Absolutely. Where
crazy.
is home now, Sebastian?
Where's home now?
Yeah.
Now home is in the suburbs of Miami. Like 35 minutes drive
Hmm.
to Miami. I live in Broward County. And yeah, so South Florida, pretty close to where you are, Danny. And I definitely don't regret my choice
Yeah.
to have moved here back in August 2019. It's a wonderful place. I would definitely recommend to anyone who is considering moving to the States. It's very diverse, very international, very welcoming, and you can't beat the weather, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So Sebastian, tell us, you mentioned you recently moved. Of course, this is immigrant entrepreneurial podcast. So let's start with that. How did you, what's your immigrant story and journey been like?
Yeah. Yes. So I have to take you back to 2000, I think 2007. So you have to know that probably like many immigrants, who come to the U.S.
So
Uh,
wait, even before 2008, tell us where were you born? Where were you raised?
yes, absolutely. So I was born and raised in France, in southern France. I was born in Marseille, which is the second largest city in France, in the south of the country. But originally, I'm from Corsica, which is a small island between Italy and France. For those who know, that's the island where Napoleon
Right.
was from. It's a beautiful place called the Island of Beauty. And, you may, sometimes when I show pictures to people, I mean, it's absolutely fantastic there. It's beautiful. And people are asking, oh my God, you come from there, but what are you doing here? I mean,
Why
why did you
leave?
come here? So, it's like for everyone, I guess. You always think that the grass is greener somewhere else. It's a beautiful place, yes, but also it's an island. It's a small island, and at some point, if you like the adventure, like I do, you like to see what's on the other side of the pond, which in this case is a big pond.
You've
uh,
crossed a few ponds.
Yes, yeah, definitely. So I was born and raised there. When I was 8, with my parents, we moved to Africa. We I lived 4 years in Africa when I was a kid,
Wow.
between 8 and 12 years old. I think that's what gave me the appetite for the adventure. I believe
Mhm. Sure.
this was an important time in my life. And then when we came back to France, then I continued, my life with my parents in France. I went to middle school, high school, then university. I went to law school in Aix-en-Provence, which is also close to Marseille, in the south of the country. It's one of the top law school there in France. Then I started, working as an in-house counsel, more in the real estate land use field. That's my original background is in real estate attorney, and that brings us to 2007, pretty much, when I decided to continue my career elsewhere. So you have to know, like many immigrants, I was always a big fan of the U.S. I was always fascinated by the U.S. When you live in Europe, you grew up with all these, American TV shows, and and you see, all the American movies, and I think the power of images, I think
Yeah.
is very, very important. So for a very long time, since I was probably 10, 12 years old, I started to like, the US, and I always wanted to come here. So when I came here on vacation in 2016, I just loved it. I fell in love with the country. I went to New York. That was the first stop. Then we flew to Los Angeles. We rented a car. We went through 7 or 8 national parks, Las Vegas. So we did like Grand Canyon, Bryce Canyon, Sequoia Park. And then we went to San Francisco. So as a
That's
huge
an
trip,
easy way to fall in love with the US when you see
absolutely.
the parks and the just how vast the country is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it was eye-opening. I was like, wow, yeah, I want to live here. So when I was back in France, and then I was like 2007, um, I spoke with a friend of mine. He was a classmate. He was in university with me, and he was also a big fan of US. And he tells me, hey, there's this thing, LLM program, blah blah blah, and I had no clue what it was. To be honest with you, I was like, okay, let me check this out. And so I did some research, and this is when I realized that you could, like, I was in a good position to apply for an LLM program so that I would be able to come to the US, do my LLM studies, and then sit for the bar exam in New York. And then if I will pass, then I would be able to get a job in the US as an attorney.
Hmm.
So, like I said, at the time, I was in-house counsel, and I wanted, I had 4 years of experience, and I wanted then to work for a law firm in France. So change of career, but still in France, in legal field. And I was thinking, okay, I'm 27 years old. If I have to take a risk, is right now. And
Right.
I said, instead of, becoming an attorney and working as a, private practice in France, how about I try for 1 year to see if I can become an attorney in the US. And if I fail, then that's fine. I come back home. And I tried. So I built my resume, my profile, my case, everything. And to be honest with you, I didn't think I would be admitted. Uh, and I was. And actually, I had, I think, 2 or 3 options.
Nice.
But I chose Temple University in Philadelphia.
Mm.
One of the reasons was that it was on the East Coast, so it was good for me. Another reason was even though it was in Pennsylvania, you would be able to sit for the New York bar exam, which was for me the #1 requirement. Another reason was that it was very close to New York, but it was much smaller and much cheaper than New York.
Sure.
So I was thinking as an immigrant, and if that's an advice that I can give when you come, and depending where you come from, but maybe if you come from London, maybe it's different. But if you come like me from southern France, which is completely different than New York, um, and you are an immigrant, I had no family here, I had no friends here, and I barely spoke English. Like really,
Your English is great.
my English now is good because I've
Yeah.
been working,
Sure.
every day in English since 2008.
Right.
But when I arrived here, I had a very poor English.
Mm.
And if you come to a big place, and I know everybody's dreaming about New York, and I used to dream about New York, um, you want to go to New York. You are like, hey, I want to go to the top schools in New York, blah blah blah. Maybe that's not a smart move, because
Yeah.
#1, it's a huge place. You get lost, you alone, and it's expensive. And I was thinking Philadelphia for me would be more like a human size, city, where it would be easier to make friends, easier to connect,
Yeah. To
and
navigate.
that was the smart move for
How
me.
long were you in Philadelphia?
I was there 1 year,
Hmm.
1 full year, a little bit more, because then I moved to New York to take the bar exam and then to look for a job. What happened at the time, it was the worst timing, and I think I'll make a parallel with what's happening right now.
Yeah. 2008, 2009, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So when I applied to come here, um, the economy was great. So basically, in 2007, when I started the whole thing, like early 2007, everything was great. So from my perspective and from everyone's perspective, that was in my case, they were thinking, you know what, if I can pay for that university and I follow that program and I graduate and I take the bar and then I pass the bar, as an, with my international background, I will get a job. I will get like a very nicely paid job in a top law firm in New York. That was the normal, scenario. That it was the case for many years, blah, blah, blah. But what nobody accounted for is the crisis.
Right.
And I was in trouble because I made that investment, and that's cost a lot of money to go to university here.
Yeah. As a foreign student. Yeah.
Yeah. The university is very expensive, and then the cost of living and all of that. It's expensive.
Sure.
So you have to, for me, it was close to 100K.
Right.
Just the full year, the program, the cost of living, the flights, all of that. It's like 100K. You have to be realistic. And 100K, if you get a job at the end, that's okay. But if you don't, if you're jobless, you're in trouble. And that's exactly what happened to me. So, and all my classmates, we moved here, we did everything, we graduated. There was a crisis. There was no job. There's nothing. So there, you have two options. Either you get stubborn and you desperately want to stay here, which I tried for 1 year because I was using my OPT. I think it's called OPT.
Yeah. Optional practical training.
Yeah. So that's what I did. I did 1 year of studies. I think that was a J1 or F1 visa. I don't remember. And then when I graduated, I did an OPT and I could stay 1 more year. And that took me to 2010. From 2008, 2009, 2010.
Yeah.
In 2010, the situation was so bad that, I decided to move back to Europe.
Wow. Yeah.
Because I didn't have a choice. I mean, at some point, you just have to accept that. That's
sure. Yeah. That crisis, with the real estate bubble, it affected for so many years. And you're right. There is a parallel to what's going on now. A little bit different circumstances, but yeah, very interesting. So you went back to France.
I went back to France. I didn't stay long in France because I was worried that me being French, if I would go back to France, I would just stay there and I would just go back to my normal life, And even if you go to Paris, I was in Paris at the time. Even if you go to Paris, it's a big city, but it's very French. It's not very international. It's very, very French. People speak French, they work in French, they work on French law, it's like this. So for me, I wanted to go to a place where I knew I would have the opportunity to go back to the US at some point when things would get better. And since over the years, I kind of moved away from real estate to go more into corporate M&A. For me, the perfect place was Luxembourg. A lot of people were wondering, oh my God, why do you go to Luxembourg? Where is that? Some people think that Luxembourg is a city in Germany. It's not. It's a small country. It's one of the founding members of the European Union, of the original 7. It's a small country that is stuck between France, Belgium, Netherlands, and Germany.
Wow.
It's very central. And the interesting fact about Luxembourg is that it's one of the richest and safest countries in the world. It's the place in the world that is number 2 in number of investment funds. So the number 1 place in the world for investment funds is in New York, private equity funds and hedge funds and all of that. Number 2 is Luxembourg.
Wow.
Now, if you look into cross-border M&A, the number 1 place in the world is Luxembourg, even before New York. It's because of the taxation system. Yeah. And it's been like this for many years.
It's one of the fiscal paradise too, right? It's one of the countries.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it this way, but let's say they have because it's then you think you go and you pay 0 taxes and everything is kind of opaque. It's not the case. They do everything by the book. Everything is, within the guidelines of the European Union, but they are just, more flexible, and they're smarter about a lot of things, and they get their revenue elsewhere. So you have it's not like you pay 0%.
Right. Okay.
But as a company, you may end up paying, 12, 13, maybe 15% tax, 16% tax.
Mhm.
I mean, it's still better than other European countries where you pay
Sure.
like 50% tax, or
Right.
it's a no-brainer. So yeah, it's a great place. And because of that, you were asking about my English. You said, well, your English is great. It's because I worked in Luxembourg. And in Luxembourg, all of my clients, they were American companies. So I was physically in Luxembourg, but on the phone and behind my screen, it's as if I was working in Manhattan. It was the
Right.
same.
Okay.
All my clients were, from the US. And
And
this for me was a blessing.
and do you find in Luxembourg, like you mentioned all of its borders, do they in non-work related, just in like normal life in Luxembourg, do most people speak French, German, English?
You will be amazed.
Yeah.
They speak, you have three official languages in Luxembourg. They are actually, I'm even wondering if there are four, but three for sure. You have French, German, and Luxembourgish.
Oh.
Luxembourgish is very close to German. My wife speaks German, and she cannot speak Luxembourgish, but she understands it. No problem. Now, me as a French, I don't understand anything about Luxembourgish.
Right. Yeah.
But I can hear that it's very similar to German. Now there's a fourth language that everybody speaks, is English.
Right.
So if you don't speak those four languages, you do not graduate high school.
Wow. Interesting.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Those amazing, in Europe especially, right? Because there's so many different borders and different languages across very, small space. Everyone speaks at least two languages, if not more.
yeah. So for me, that was a smart move. And then I did wait. Maybe that can help, others that are following the podcast. Um, for me, it was a better move to go back to Europe instead of, like really, crashing here, trying to survive the crisis. Go back to, where I was from, and then try to leverage on what I could build here over the years, my New York bar, my LLM, all of that. It's valuable. I'm not saying that it will automatically open doors, but it's still valuable. You still, stand out compared to everybody else in your country. And then for me, my goal number one every day was to go back to the US. Every decision I made after that, it was to come back to the US. So any career choice I've made since 2010 was to be able to come back here. And
that's amazing.
You have to be committed. You have to be persistent. You need to have, you need to be driven really, because it's tough. I can tell you. When you watch, the Rocky Balboa movies, like every morning he's shaving in front of the mirror. He has the picture. So basically, for me, was like this for like 4 or 5 years. Every morning I would get up and think, what can I do to go back? That was my goal.
That's amazing. I think that is something why entrepreneurs, immigrants, wind up being great entrepreneurs. That persistence, that you have a goal, that something inside you tells you, you know what, I want to go, I want to have a life in the US, right? And the same thing as an entrepreneur, you start your company and you go like, I want my company to, grows this much or accomplish these things, and that persistence, you kind of like everything else, it's like a muscle. You practice it, you grow it, and you become stubborn with one goal. That's great, Sebastien. So tell us more.
So then when I could, one thing that I hear sometimes, or one question that I'm being asked sometimes is, from friends or even people that I don't know that are in Europe, They say, hey, how, how can I come to the US? And sometimes people think that it's very easy to come here, or they can just, because they have experience and a degree, even relevant, in their country, that they would come here and that will work. And unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. I give you an example. You could be the best doctor in France or Italy or Germany or wherever. I mean, a human being is a human being, right? So
Sure,
you could definitely come here and save lives. That's not the problem. But the way this country is working, that wouldn't be possible, because you wouldn't be able, even though you're the most brilliant, medical mind in the world, you wouldn't be able to come here and work as a doctor.
right.
You don't have a US degree. You don't really know how the system works here. Maybe the language is different. Certain terms are different. So and that's the medical field, which, like I said, every human being is the same. If tomorrow you go to Europe and the doctor is going to see you, I mean, he's gonna
Same
take care of
thing.
you. That's not a problem. Now, if you enter certain other fields like law,
Law, especially.
now that's a
Yeah,
that's a problem, because it's
yeah,
completely different now. Nothing is the same.
yeah,
So you have to accept that if you want to come here, you will have to make sacrifices.
right.
You're not going to come here and say, hey, this is it, I'm
I'm
here,
here.
I'm the smartest guy in my country, and now I'm going to crush it here in America. uh, a lot of people talk about the American dream. I still believe in it. At
Nice.
least for me, it was the American dream.
Mhm,
But what they forget to say is that before the dream, there's a lot of pain. There's a
mhm.
lot of sacrifices. There's a lot of money that you spend, time that you spend,
Yeah,
uh, and whoever is willing to immigrate here, I think they need to be ready for the finance implications that it has, but also the toll on your health, on your family, on your friends, on everything,
right.
because it's a sacrifice. It's not like you come here and then that's it. I mean,
Yeah,
unless you win the green card on the
sure.
lottery, and sure,
Yeah, it's
and you're
easier.
already wealthy. I mean, yeah, great for you. You're gonna have a great life. But before being able to touch that American dream,
Yeah,
you will have to work hard, and you will have
yeah.
to
Um,
sacrifice things.
that's one thing I love about some of my clients. They that the persistence, and it really is a struggle. You know, to get to the point where you want to be, but many of them have this long-term vision that it really is an example, to anyone who, because moving, plus you're leaving family behind, you're leaving the system that you already know, you leave it. And I know many doctors who have to repeat a residency program, which is 3-4 years of
Yeah,
like hard work, because they want to get the degrees. But it's possible. They do it every day. People do it. Millions of people, and definitely hundreds and thousands of entrepreneurs, right? I mean, this country was built on that immigrant
immigrants.
mentality, and from Andrew Carnegie, a Scottish citizen. I'm rereading Think and Grow Rich right now during the pandemic. So they talk a lot about Andrew Carnegie and how he built the steel companies. So it is something that, whether you come from Europe, whether you come from Central America, like I did, or anywhere in the world, we share a little bit of a common DNA, in that we're willing to struggle and fight and go through these difficult times to reach this American dream that we're hoping to achieve.
Yeah, and I think it's when you're an immigrant, you know. Uh, I mean, unless you don't, and I think you would fail, but you know that you are 10 steps behind Americans.
Sure. Yeah.
born and raised here.
Right. Of course.
And if you know that, and if you accept it, and if you think, okay, if I want to, if I want to be at least at their level, to be able to compete, to be able to get a job, to be able to do all of that, I need to work 10 times more than they do.
Right.
I need to think 10 times faster than they think. And I believe that if you do this, not only you will be able to compete with them, but you may actually, uh, you know, go higher than them,
Mm-hmm.
because they don't have that. I'm not saying it, I don't want to make generalities, but they won't have that drive. They won't have that persistence because they don't need to. They don't need
Right.
to.
Right.
But sometimes people are in their little comfort zone, and they probably there, and that's great for them. But if you're way behind and you work hard, yeah, that's why I think certain entrepreneurs are very successful here. It's because they work so much more than anybody else, because they have to.
Absolutely.
And for me, that was the case. I knew I had to be, working more and doing more and be smarter and more aware of a lot of things, because otherwise I just wouldn't compete. I wouldn't compete.
So right now we're still in Luxembourg.
Yeah.
So what was the next few years?
So after that, I'm going to fast forward a little bit, but I had the chance to find an employer in Luxembourg that had made an acquisition in New York, in the U.S., and they needed someone from Europe to help them kind of make that transition from that small shop that was in New York, and now becoming part of a global group. So I was the very first person being sent from Europe, where the headquarters were, to New York, to be able to help the team here in New York. So I got very lucky, but I would say I also, I don't know how to say that in English, but I also kind of pushed for that luck.
Yeah,
of course. You need luck, right? You need to be lucky at some point, but you also need to be looking for it. You need to be pushing for it. And like I said before, all the choices, all the decisions I've made over the years in my career, they were leading me there.
Yeah. It goes to the old saying, right? That the harder you work, the luckier you get. By coincidence, maybe, but you put yourself in those situations where luck permits to help you and give you that last little push of something you've been working hard at. So do you remember what was your status when you came in through the job?
Yeah, absolutely. So we did an L1A. So when they hired me, they wanted me to go right away. So they hired me in Luxembourg, and they wanted me to go right away to New York. And at the time, like, nobody really knew what to do. They didn't know how visa worked. I knew a little bit, but not so much. And we were thinking H-1B, but at the time, the H-1B, there was a quota, there was a lottery, that it was only on April 1st, the whole nonsense. And then we said, look, maybe L1A is better. And also my goal was to immigrate here. So I wanted to have a green card. So we were thinking, and my wife was coming with me with my kids. So we wanted my wife to work.
Right.
So for us, the best was the L1A.
Yeah.
Because my wife could work, because that would lead at the time, remember, at the time, that would lead to a fast track to green card.
Yeah.
Like within 4 months or 5 months, you get your green card, which is no longer the case anymore. And that's why we decided for L1A. What we had to do, we had to stay 1 more year in Luxembourg, because you need to have worked at least 1 year in, outside of the US within the group of companies, so that then you can file for L1A and be transferred from overseas to the US sister company or.
Yeah, and immigration is one of those areas that is changing rapidly. We see, changes every month it seems like there's something new. So that's when, when I do consultations and strategy sessions with either individual clients or company clients, there's so many details about each case being different that will guide someone into a specific field, right? So, just for whoever's listening, it's hard with the few details that we have to determine what legal strategy for immigration to use. That's just the lawyer in me dropping a little disclaimer, as we know we have to do. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, every case is different, and sometimes, and I was one of those as well. Sometimes you go on Google and then you type, and you think, that's great, that's the visa I need. And I'm sure you get those emails
A lot
from clients that says, hey, I need a whatever visa. Can you do this? What's your price? And you have to tell them, okay, we need a consultation, we need to speak, because you may think that this is the right fit for you, but maybe not, and let's talk. And for me, this, and remember, I'm an attorney myself, but so there's a lot of things that I understand, but for those that are not in the legal field, and if they rely on Google, they may think, oh yeah, I know, I need to do this, but in fact, no, not at all. Actually, certain choices that you make, if you're not smart about it, that can make your situation worse, actually. So you have to be careful. So when I moved to the US, that was end of 2014, I moved with an L1A, and after a year, after a year, with my employer, we had agreed that they would file for green card for me. Because the reason why they hired me, and for me, the condition for me to work with them was that they knew I wanted to immigrate here, and I wanted them to apply for a green card for me. That was the deal from the beginning. They knew, because I told them, if it's just to go there for 1-2 years, I'm not interested. I've done it already. Then I will pass. So when I moved here, I stayed 1 year, and they were supposed to file for green card, and they did not at the time for whatever reason. So they asked me to wait another year, and then for various reasons, again, they couldn't do it.
Wow.
So I had to be patient again for another year. And then after 3 years, this is where, and I'm not saying anything bad about them. I like, certain things happen sometimes, like,
as long as it's spoken and correct.
One of the reasons was that there was a merger, like companies were merging, and then we were thinking, is it the right time now to file for a green card? I mean, the company is in too many moving pieces. I mean, you also don't want to, and that's why things got delayed. And then unfortunately, when we were ready to file for green card, this is when the new administration came in, and then things changed.
A little,
and then from a 4 to 5 months, lead time for processing time for the green card, it became a 2 years processing time, and I had to wait another 2 years to get my green card. So, I got it. I got it on Thanksgiving Day, actually.
Really?
Yeah, a day before, I think. And I think that was back in 2018. I think Thanksgiving 2018.
Wow. So your journey started 2007. And then 10, 11 years later. So I imagine you had a B2. Oh no, you're European, so you had ESTA first to come in as a tourist. F1, which is a student visa. OPT. Then back to Europe. Then L1A. Then green card. We find right now, especially, all these visas, all letters in the US, all the visas are designated by letters. You have to form almost like a chain, it's not like one step process usually. It's a chain of things, and it's very admirable that you had the vision and patience, especially to go through that process.
Thank you. It was tough, and it took me 11 years, and I know, like, if some people are listening now, they're probably thinking, oh my God, 11 years? No, but that's the reality. And unless maybe you are in a different scenario, and you can have a different type of visa that is faster. But if you're really in Europe right now, in Asia or in Africa, wherever you are, and you have to rely on an employer to sponsor you to come here, it's going to be long, and then you have to be committed and you have to make sacrifices. For me, it's 11 years. 11 years that it took me, to and all this time I was, I had to make financial sacrifices.
Sure.
I could have been, making much more money, but that would mean also that I wouldn't be able to come here. I would have a different career plan, maybe in Europe. But it also means that I was far away from my family, my friends, for 11 years. Yeah, it's I would say, be careful what you wish for. If I think if you are not, and that's the best advice probably I can give, if you are not fully committed and ready to make these kind of sacrifices, then immigration into the US is not for you.
Yeah.
And maybe it's better to come here once in a while, as a tourist. You enjoy a couple of weeks, you visit the country, and then you go back home. But immigrating here through employment channel, I would say,
Right. Sure.
because again, there are other scenarios where it's much faster, and they should speak with you about that. But again, if you have zero traction, you're back outside of the US, and you need to rely on an employer for H-1B or L-1, this is going to be a long process.
It's going to be a long process.
And
It's funny. This is where I think a good transition, because that same persistence, that same patience and kind of vision applies to entrepreneurs too, right? If you want to, at one point, I think entrepreneurship is also a common DNA among people who at some point say, you know what, I want to do it myself, or I want to start a business. I want to create something. I want to create a company. Tell us, how did that? You have a very interesting entrepreneurial story as well. So let's go through the transition from being an employee to starting this amazing company that you've started.
Yes, thanks. So one thing that and you will know that better than I do, so stop me if I'm wrong. But one thing you have to know is that when you have a L1A, when you have a green card, is different. But when you have L1A or H1B or something like that, technically you cannot start a business because your visa is attached to your employer, and then that should be the only thing you do. So for me, until I got my green card, I really wanted to become an entrepreneur. I had all these ideas. I had all these things I wanted to work on, but I just couldn't. I couldn't because legally I couldn't, and that's what it is. So I know certain people take the risk and they do it, but I think it's too big of a risk. And also, if you come here, and you will see that America is very much like that. If you play, by the rules, if you do everything by the book, you follow the process, everything is going to be fine. Now, if you try to be smart about it and go around the rules and you get caught, then you're in big trouble. Yeah. So for me, it was not, even though I was really, really, looking forward to become an entrepreneur, I didn't start until I got my green card, and I could. So that's something they need to keep in mind. That you need to be very, very careful. But once you have the green card, you're free to do whatever you want. And then I decided to become an entrepreneur. So I think about 1 or 2 years after I got my green card, I decided to leave the company I spent 7 years with, the company that allowed me to come here, and I'm thankful for that. But they knew also from the beginning, back in 2013, that there will be a point in time where I would leave, and that point in time would probably be for like 5 to 7 years. So that came to that point. Yes, I wanted to build something different. As you know, I'm an attorney by trade, corporate M&A. But now I'm a co-founder of a medical technology company. And
Oh.
you may think, how did you move from, it's completely different. So over the years, I learned how to help businesses grow and expand globally, and develop their brand and their story, and and become successful, and possibly at some point exit and be acquired by bigger firms or investment firms or multinationals, or even be listed. So that's my background. And then I had the opportunity through a friend who is behind the original idea, to join this venture, and the company is called Smardii. So I'm going to spell it because it's a little complicated. It's Smardii.
Okay.
So it's an IoT monitoring solution in the healthcare space, and it is actually very very timely to talk about this, because we build a device, and actually I have it here. I didn't do it on purpose, but I have it on my desk actually.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can see well.
Yeah, you can see it.
You see?
Interesting.
So it's that disc, okay? I mean, it looks big on the screen because I'm zooming in, but this disc is actually able to turn any diaper. So here we talk about adult diapers, not baby diapers. It can work for babies, but our market number one is the adult market, the elderly market. So to turn their diaper or briefs into a connected smart solution that can monitor health conditions.
Wow.
So through this, now when you attach it to the front of the diaper, so it's like a belt buckle basically that will go into the front of the diaper. You can detect the presence of urine, of stool, of body temperature, but also detect body positioning for sleep analysis, early signs of falls, fall detection, geolocation, indoor, outdoor, and we can also do a real-time urine analysis. So we can do a urine test, real time through a diaper now. So
it is so timely now that we're all in quarantine over here, and to have anything remote, right? This remote access to data of patients and elderly family members. Yeah, very interesting.
And we absolutely, and what our device can help with is, like you said, it's to limit unnecessary contacts. We all know that now we have less and less masks and protective gear and sanitizing products and all of that. But today you have, in a nursing home environment, for example, and we know that they are the target. I mean, they are the target number one now. They are the victim number one now of this virus. In the care plan, you have to check on them 4 times a day at least. So, and you have to, because there is no remote monitoring. I would say there was no remote monitoring until this. So imagine if they have to go check the patients and they have no protection. They have no mask, they have no gloves, they have nothing. You're in big trouble now, because now you contribute to the contamination, and that's a never-ending story. It's a vicious circle, and that's why we believe, and we are in conversation now with certain states who are actually thinking, it's not even us, it's actually them thinking that what we built should now become a new standard of care in the US, because that's it. Now we in 2020, with what's happening with coronavirus, and remember, it's just the beginning. It may continue for a long time. It may come back, and now it's coronavirus, COVID-19, and then maybe next year something else. I mean, who knows? So we have to be prepared for pandemics, and remote monitoring to limit unnecessary contacts and to automate certain tasks is a must. So for us right now, this pandemic is actually putting us in a spotlight because of our solution, because of what we do.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And it is something that, many industries are changing, um, due to this, right? We're doing a Zoom call. I think Zoom is one of the companies that's probably the busiest. Everyone teleconferencing. There's a lot of conversations about courts allowing video conferencing more than before, and there's just a new way to look at reality. And the COVID-19, I don't think it changed it, but maybe it accelerated everyone's perception of what should be done remotely or not. Um, okay.
yeah,
Yeah, very
absolutely.
interesting.
We do more. We do more of that. I
Mhm.
mean, for me personally, I was already working remotely, so
Yeah.
it doesn't change much. But yeah, everything is done via the video conferences. So it's not too bad. Um, yeah, yeah. We adjust as well.
Yeah. And so what have been some of the challenges that I mean, the obviously this has put you in the spotlight, as you mentioned. Do you see any specific challenges of working during this time, especially in a company like yours, which is so innovative, and it's not the normal brick and mortar business, but what have you seen, any challenges during this time?
Yes. So I would say the coronavirus is for us, a positive, but also negative.
Yeah,
Um, and I know it sounds wrong when I say it's positive for us, but you know what I mean.
yeah,
It validates what we've been working on, for now quite some time. But on the negative side, when you're an entrepreneur, you unless you start a business like a restaurant, or I mean, if you start a restaurant right now, you're in trouble. But
yeah.
if you start whatever it is, I'm not talking about the coronavirus now, but
Mhm.
in a normal state,
Sure.
normal time, if you start a restaurant, a bakery, or then you rely on customers, and that you know if you have a good product, good service, you will have customers, and this is going to work out. For us, and I know there are entrepreneurs out there that are trying to come to the US to start a company, to have a startup, and they are more in the technical field, in the med tech, biotech, whatever it is,
Mhm.
software engineering, and all of that. One of the biggest challenge right now is funding,
Right.
because companies like ours that are early stage, we rely heavily on funding.
Mhm.
And right now, what's happening with the stock market, with the economy, um, everybody is, getting cold feet.
Yeah.
Everybody is like, "Oh, let's wait and see. Let's see what's
Mhm.
happening," and that's normal. I mean, we don't see that as something abnormal. It makes sense that people want to see what's going on before they actually invest money, or before they actually even if they committed to capital, they actually release that capital. So we see that there's a big concern right now. I think also, um, for us, we are in elder care med tech. So the way things are going will just make us actually more necessary as a product, and,
Yeah.
and therefore more
Absolutely.
profitable, and more, we'll have more customers. I mean, we get requests every day,
Yeah.
really, customers every day that call and say, hey, can I get it today? No, sorry, but you can't.
Right.
uh, but if you are not in that space, I would say today is very complicated. It's very
Yeah.
complicated for customer retention, for revenue, for funding. Everything stopped. Everything
Yeah.
stopped.
And let me ask you to see if you share, perhaps some of this immigrant optimism as well. I tend to think that absolutely things are going to be, there's complications. Obviously, the world economy is at risk of all this, but at the same time, it's a great time for opportunity. When things are kind of in disarray, uh, some people tend to back off, uh, that mentality of absolutely let's wait and see what happens. Um, and some people, and sometimes it's hard. Ask me the same question at 2 o'clock, and maybe I'll answer differently than 4 o'clock. But there's also time to take action. Maybe the action is limited, but there's always, put yourself out there, or create value for people that may be going through a
Yeah.
tougher than you. And then I tend to think that after this is gone, um, people recognize that you are there for the community, that you're there for your clients, that you're providing value to people. And this is the time to kind of show that leadership to people, and show, from everything that you've gone through, put those experiences to play in creating opportunity, not only for you. I'm not saying become an opportunist, or something like that,
Yeah.
but help people, and then they realize that you are there for the community.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think it all depends on the type of idea that you have.
Sure.
Uh, I always take that example. Maybe it's because I love food, but if you try to open a restaurant right now, well, that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Now, if we always say don't miss the opportunity of a good crisis.
Yeah.
And that's true. A lot of people, I'm sure, will thrive out of this crisis because they will
Absolutely.
have the right idea, they will have the
Yeah.
right timing, and they will be willing to actually, take that, make that jump and say, look, that's my chance, that's my time.
Yeah.
So I would say if you're an entrepreneur today and you think that you have an idea, or you have a project, or you have an offer of goods or services that can really make a difference today, I would
Yeah.
say go for it. That's your
Go
chance.
for it.
That, that's
Absolutely.
that's your chance. You should definitely do it. And if you fail, then that's fine. You fail. You tried, and I think if you tell people in a couple of years, hey, I tried something that was during the crisis, I was trying to make a difference, and it didn't work out. I don't think people would just um, point finger at you. I would say
Right. Yeah.
you
I
tried.
I think, there's two ways to see that. I think some people don't do anything, and they go like, well, in 2 years, when the crisis is over, and they ask me what did I do, and I say I didn't do anything, then they can use this crisis as an excuse. Versus the people that go like, I'm gonna try something, because if I fail, and then in 2 years someone asks me why you failed, blame the crisis, and it's understanding. But there's
Yeah.
a different mentality, and that's very interesting. I had some questions prepared, and we've been going for like 35-40 minutes. I think we answered a few of them. um, so what is the biggest single decision that you've taken from a work perspective to adapt your business to what's going on?
Uh, to what's going on with the COVID-19, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I would say for now, everybody working remotely.
Yeah. Of
For
course.
me, like it was already the case, so it doesn't change much for me. But we work remotely, all of us. We also plan to because in our solution uh, there are certain pieces of equipment that needs to be installed
Mm.
in nursing home facilities. It's not a very complicated installation. It's something very easy. It's like plug and play on an outlet, so it's
Yeah.
very easy. So we will have to do now virtual installations. Uh,
Mm.
Again, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
When you receive something at home, let's say you receive your connected cameras, your smart cameras. I
Right.
mean, it's very easy to install. You can do it yourself.
Sure.
So here's the same. So that's one. I mean, that's two. And the third one is, I would say, because we are in healthcare, we healthcare technology. We had a plan of action for the next couple of months where our next milestone will be to start a pilot program or an early access to product program of 1 month at a select group of nursing home facilities and hospitals.
Mhm.
And we were planning to do that around like July,
Okay.
with a certain number of features for our product. And now, because of what's happening, because we feel kind of obligated to, not obligated, but we feel like we have to help out, even though we are a startup, we have to do, what we can. We are trying to get a COVID-19 emergency version, maybe with limited features. So there will be only urine detection and stool detection, but at least we can produce more of it, and we can maybe go out there faster and help nursing home and hospital quicker because they need help. And today, the number one help that they need, you need to reduce the unnecessary contacts. So that their burning rate of protective gear and sanitizing products can go down a little bit, because otherwise it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable.
Sebastien, and if people wanted to learn more about Smardii, where can we look you up?
Yes, I think the best is probably to go to our website. There's a lot of information. There are videos, there are stuff like that. So it's www.smardii.com. And then I would say Smardii, maybe it's better. You see it here written. Do you see well?
I do, yeah, you can read it.
SM as a mom, AR as a Richard, D as a dad, I, Smardii.com. I think that's the best. Excellent. Yeah, we have also on our main page, we have a COVID-19 support option. Oops, sorry.
No worries.
It's a connected world now.
It is a connected world.
Yeah. So
the kids gonna come out in a few minutes.
The family,
yeah,
the wife, everybody.
Right.
So yeah, I would say that's the best way. And so there is a COVID-19 support button on the top right corner, and then you can see what we can do for you if you are a nursing home facility or hospital and you need help. You need help reducing unnecessary contacts and having a remote monitoring solution.
That's excellent. I thought of you when we're doing this podcast. I didn't make that connection of how relevant your product is to the crazy time that we're going through right now.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing. You're the first immigrant entrepreneur podcast guest. So I think that was great. It was great talking to you. Hope to hear and see more from Smardii, especially obviously Florida. We have an aging population. My own parents that worried because, as you said, COVID-19 targets our seniors. So looking forward to seeing more from Smardii and seeing how they will impact not only the medical arena but the economic arena as well.
Yeah. Thanks
Excellent.
a lot.
All right, Sebastien, thank you so much for everything, and we'll stay in touch.
No problem. My pleasure. Thanks.
Right.
Thanks, Danny.
Bye-bye.
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 Stay safe.
You too.